Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into what I like to call the ultimate core methodology for LinkedIn growth. We're looking at one, highly specific master instruction, basically a blueprint on how to build a high-performing professional presentation. It's super concise, it's demanding, and it's got the exact ingredients you absolutely need to capture professional attention. We're going to unpack every single requirement today so you can see exactly how all these pieces fit together. So here's our roadmap for today's Explainer. First, we'll look at the overall LinkedIn growth blueprint. Second, hooking your audience. Third, demonstrating with screen recordings. Fourth, actionable, beginner-friendly tips. And finally, we'll wrap up with the call to action.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the LinkedIn Growth Blueprint, deconstructing the formula. Now, our source material is actually a direct command. It literally says, create a professional YouTube video on LinkedIn growth with hook, examples, screen recordings, actionable tips, CTA, and beginner-friendly explanations. Create a 10-minute-long video, please. This perfectly illustrates the 6 absolute non-negotiable ingredients for a professional presentation. And the kicker? You've got to fit the whole shebang into just 10 minutes. It's a pretty rigid framework, right? You need the hook to grab them, examples and screen recordings to prove your point, actionable, beginner-friendly tips to actually educate them, and finally a CTA to direct their next move. Think of this as the literal DNA of highly effective content. If you drop even one element, well, the whole structure kind of falls apart.
Moving on to Section 2, hooking your audience, the crucial first step.
You'll notice the blueprint explicitly lists the hook first. And that's no accident, guys. Without an initial capture of attention, the rest of your content just doesn't stand a chance. I mean, think about platforms where professionals are endlessly scrolling through updates, industry news, all that thought leadership stuff. Your presentation is battling it out against thousands of other data points. If you don't immediately signal why your insights on LinkedIn growth actually matter within those first few crucial seconds, boom, your audience is gone. The hook is literally the gatekeeper to your entire presentation.
Right after that hook, the blueprint demands examples. This is all about bridging the gap between theoretical growth ideas and practical, real-world application. Because, let's face it, once you have their attention, you have to justify keeping it. You can't just toss out a claim that a certain strategy works for LinkedIn growth, you have to show it in action. Examples are your undeniable proof. They show that your concepts aren't just, hypothetical musings, but actual tested strategies.
The really crucial takeaway here is that examples prevent your content from floating away into abstraction. They anchor your audience in concrete reality. For instance, if you just say optimize your profile, actually scratch that. That's way too vague. It's just abstract. But if you provide a concrete example of a real profile that skyrocketed from 100 views to 10,000 views just by tweaking their headline, well, suddenly you've transformed a really dry instruction into a super compelling narrative. And that is exactly why the blueprint demands examples immediately after the hook.
Okay, Section 3. Demonstrating with screen recordings. Show, don't just tell.
Now, what's super interesting here is that the source doesn't just ask for visuals in some general, vague sense. It specifically mandates screen recordings. And that tells us something absolutely vital about teaching LinkedIn growth. It is a highly tactical, interface-driven platform. You can't just sit there talking into a camera about where to click or how to dig through the analytics dashboard. No way. You have to literally show them the screen.
It's not just about telling your audience what to do, it's about visually guiding them step by step to guarantee absolute clarity. Just look at these benefits. First, it provides visual proof that your strategy is the real deal. Second, it enables this over-the-shoulder style of learning, which, if you think about it, is incredibly intimate and highly effective for actually retaining information. And most importantly, it allows for exact replication. Your viewer can pause your explainer, pull up their own LinkedIn tab, and mimic your exact cursor movements. It's a total game changer that turns passive viewers into active participants.
Let's keep it moving to Section 4. Actionable, beginner-friendly tips, accessible education. The blueprint insists on actionable tips. This means your content has to be built around immediate utility, not just passive, theoretical fluff. Your audience should be able to log off from your explainer and immediately apply what they've just learned to their own LinkedIn profiles. Like, if your advice is simply be more authentic, well, that's not easily actionable. But if your advice is post one industry insight every Tuesday at 9 a.m. using 3 specific hashtags, now that is deeply actionable. And that's exactly what the blueprint demands. This pairs up perfectly with the requirement for beginner-friendly explanations. It's basically the core philosophy of how this information needs to be delivered.
Honestly, it doesn't matter how advanced or groundbreaking your LinkedIn growth strategy is. If you can't explain it to someone who just set up their account yesterday, your content fails the Blueprint standard. The whole goal here is to democratize knowledge, to strip away that intimidation factor that always seems to surround professional networking algorithms.
And this brilliantly illustrates that true professional content doesn't alienate beginners. Instead, it makes complex LinkedIn growth mechanics totally accessible to everyone. Think about it. Jargon-heavy expert talk just builds a wall. Sure, it might make the creator look super smart, but it usually just leaves the audience feeling confused and frustrated. On the flip side, beginner-friendly explanations build a bridge. By using simple language to unpack complex ideas, like, say, breaking down how the algorithm prioritizes dwell time or engagement rates, you build massive trust. You aren't just some distant expert, you become their trusted guide.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the call to action, directing the momentum. After providing all that accessible, visually demonstrated value, the Blueprint requires a CTA, a call to action, to really harness all the engagement you've just built up. Think about what you've done. You've hooked them, you've shown them concrete examples, you've given them over-the-shoulder screen recordings, and handed over actionable, beginner-friendly advice. At this point, your viewer is fully primed. They've received immense value. The absolute worst thing you could do right now is just let the presentation fade to black. You have got to give them a clear, decisive next step.
And this brings the entire methodology together into one beautifully cohesive flow. Step 1, hook the audience. Break their preoccupation. Step 2, educate them visually and actionably. This is where your examples, screen recordings, and beginner-friendly tips live. And Step 3, deliver that CTA. And remember our prompt from earlier? The Blueprint demands you do all of this effectively in under 10 minutes. Whether your CTA is telling them to connect with you, subscribe to your newsletter, or go implement the strategy right this second, it leverages all that goodwill you've so efficiently built. It literally completes the circuit.
So, to wrap up this explainer, I want you to consider this. If these 6 specific elements are the definitive blueprint for creating professional growth content, how are you going to implement them to drive your own success? That command we looked at today? It wasn't just a basic to-do list. It's a literal psychological roadmap for retaining and converting professional attention. So the next time you sit down to outline a presentation, check it against this list. Do you have a hook? Are you using actual screen recordings? Is your language truly beginner-friendly? Let this blueprint be your guide. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.